Hey everybody, it's Julene with JovesStar Astrology. How you doing? I am a day late talking about this eclipse, but I'm here to do the eclipse video, the solar eclipse that we had yesterday, October the 2nd, in the sign of Libra. And boy, this is a really active time in my life, and I can see the activity in the collective and uh, in what's going on in the lives of the people that I know. And this Aries Libra axis, as it goes out in the beginning of 2025, I think is going to have proven to be on fire. I mean, there is so much change in the air, and that's what the cardinal signs do. The Aries is fire, cardinal fire, and Libra is air, an air sign, cardinal air sign. So a lot going on, and yeah, it represents relationships for sure. So we all could have gone through adjustments or changes in our relationships, but personal relationships, right? But it can be, it's much more than that, much more than love relationships, as I'm seeing. And this solar eclipse, for me personally, brought a lot of those things to light, where it was like, okay, I know what this is all about. Even if there were longstanding issues that I have been dealing with, or others in my life have been dealing with, or the clients that I have talked to have been dealing with, that this eclipse brought that the clarity. It's like the laser focus of exactly what the purpose might have been for all of this, and maybe even brought some clarity in terms of what action to take. And this eclipse happened with Mercury conjunct, and that's information in the mind. But just before the eclipse, the day before the eclipse, we experienced a Mercury cazimi, right? So when Mercury is so close to the sun, it's said to burn up the planet. And so when we're talking about a planet that provides us information and the ability to think clearly, when it's so close to the sun that's burned up, it can kind of like fog, give us some brain fog, or, not really give us the clarity that we need. But when that planet comes into a cazimi, which is exactly conjunct the sun, where there is crystal clear, the potential for crystal clear clarity in that moment, that's where the ahas may have been coming in. They did for me, and they did for other people that I've spoken to. And so it's really interesting and magical, even if the situations have been difficult, right? So we had that cazimi, and boy, was it loud. And then the eclipse occurred just as Mercury passed the sun. So still conjunct, right? This eclipse. And so we're obviously going to look at the chart and see, but it's important to remember, this Aries Libra eclipse cycle. And eclipses bring fated events, right? And eclipse is they're designed to to evolve, right? We're evolving something in our lives through interacting with it, through experiencing change of some sort, whether that's, we're being challenged to be the change or to change, right? Or both. And, or whether we're just seeing it around us. The cardinal signs are obviously really affected. They have been, and the nodes went into Aries and Libra in late June of 2023. And then the eclipses started to hit in the fall of 2023. And then again in the spring of 2024. So end of March, beginning of April. And these themes are just sort of carrying on. With Jupiter in the mix, right, which is in Gemini, so it's a mutable air sign. But when we're talking about the Libra axis, there's a trine there. So Jupiter is opening up, and the trine is of the nature of Jupiter, right? And it is feeding right into that Libra polarity in the eclipse cycle, sextile then to the North Node in Aries. And what I've noticed that is obviously really ramping up the communication, because Gemini is about communication and the movement in a lot of things, right? Air sign, that represents the mind and communication. But Gemini also represents more than one thing, which is, and I spoke about this in my last few videos, right? Where Jupiter and Gemini is concerned, is that it's more than one thing. So it can feel like a very chaotic time where there's that trine feeding into the nodal axis is creating sort of a whirlwind, right? A dust devil, if you will, of possibly different and multiple types of issues, which can be confusing us. It's like, well, which way do we go? What do we do? And so I think it's made this time period even more bigger, right? Jupiter makes things bigger and more significant. And so now that Jupiter went into Gemini, right, in the end of May of this year, and boy, I think that's when a lot of us started to, everything started to speed up a little bit, right, for us. And it was really, it was involved significantly in this last eclipse. And so I think we've been feeling that for a while now. So very, very significant and interesting. And, I mean, I can't even imagine, like, I know what has gone through my mind and what the issues that have presented themselves for me. And it's definitely more than one thing. Let me know what that is for you. Are you feeling chaotic? Is there just so much it seems to take care of that you need to take care of, or that's coming at you, that it's difficult to figure out what to do first, or even gain the clarity of how to do some of those things, right? It just, like, it's almost like a no control, right? Like you need to do something, but what do you do? Now, this eclipse is also happening. That happened just a few days, and I'm doing this on the 3rd, right, the day after the eclipse, where Mars in the sign of Cancer is going to be entering into its shadow period, because we have a really long retrograde for Mars that will actually start in Leo, but it will come back and end up going direct in the sign of Cancer, which is why we call it the shadow period. So it enters its shadow period at the degree that it will eventually go direct, but that's going to be in late March, right? I think it's late March, early April. So we've got a really long Mars retrograde in the sign of Cancer ahead of us, and embedded pretty closely, we're feeling that. What's coming up now is something that we're going to be working through for a while now, potentially. Going into end of March, early April. So pay attention, like, what's going on. This could be something that we're going back and forth on, or we're working with or dealing with in some way, with this eclipse happening just before Mars goes into its shadow. So it's a very dynamic eclipse. And why does Mars play in so significantly? Well, Mars in Cancer. Cancer is a cardinal sign. So that means that Mars will be creating a square, or is creating a square with this eclipse, and that makes this. It makes things. It makes it so that there's going to be significant change, even more so. I mean, in fact, with Pluto having gone retrograde back in the sign of Capricorn, although it's later degrees than this eclipse occurred. Even Capricorn will come into play, right, between now and the end of November, when it goes direct and starts to move into Aquarius again, where it will stay. But at some point here, in the very short order, in the next month to 2 months, we're going to have a cardinal grand square, right? So change is on the horizon, and cardinal signs represent the beginning of each season, and that is when we see new things coming, sprouting, coming up, or we see things dying, right, or regenerating, or a harvest of something. So they represent significant periods of change where we take action in some way to actually facilitate change. So very dynamic. And I'm going to pull the chart up so we can take a look at that. We'll talk about the Sabian symbol for this eclipse. And I think it's going to, hopefully it will make sense to you in terms of what's going on with your life. That's the goal here, right? Thanks for putting up with me last video. I had the worst cold, but feeling so much better now. But here in Arizona, it's still so hot. In fact, it started to cool down a little bit, and now the temperature's just risen. So there's just all kinds of weird weather things going on too, all over the country, right? We've got the hurricane that occurred, and after that, the Pisces eclipse just before this eclipse occurred. And Pisces is all about water, and with Jupiter and Gemini, that was big storms. I think I talked about that in my last video. And so we've seen a lot of that, big water events, and sad news and things that have happened since then. And seeing that a lot of people have suffered because of that, and are still significantly suffering and not able to get what it is that they need. So that's a whole nother thing, but definitely represents that Pisces eclipse, and even going into this Libra-Aries eclipse, where the scales need to be balanced, right? Who is going to help these people, and how are we going to come together to do that? And is it causing anger and aggression, and are there legal systems and ramifications, and does it have anything to do with political issues? I don't know, but it's a big deal. So it's interesting when you see just what's going on in the collective, not to mention disagreements and war and other things going on elsewhere in the world, and then in our lives, right? So this is an interesting time. So this will be the last eclipse in Libra during this cycle. We will have the nodes move into Pisces and Virgo in January, but we will have one more eclipse in Aries in the springtime. Before this is completely over. It's sort of one of those half in, half out, right? That we just kind of had the first Pisces eclipse, even though we were still in Aries and Libra. So we've still got that coming, but we're coming to the end. And I think that it's critical at this point. And we're going to start seeing, with all of these cardinal signs coming into squares, like I said, we're going to start seeing significant change occur in our lives as well as others. So let's take a look at the chart. Let me see if I can there we go. I've got the chart up there. And before we let's see, let me make sure my pen's working, because that's always a thing, right? Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to get it. So we're looking over here at this, and at this big stellium in Libra, right? We've got the north node there, and then the moon and the sun together, which represents the solar eclipse. But we've got other things going on there too that is really charging things up and spicing up this eclipse. And I'll talk about that too. But here we have the south node, and here we have the north node, right? Aries and Libra in the mix here. So let's go over the Sabian symbol first, and then we'll talk about the placements. So we're talking 11 degrees of Libra, because we always round up, as you all know if you watch my videos. And let me just take a peek at which one I want to use. Libra. So Libra 11. Okay. Let's do this one. All right, Libra 11 is a professor peering over his glasses. Keyword: specialization. Theme is scholarship. The symbol speaks to the excellence, pride, and self-confidence required of any individual who seeks to establish and maintain a position of authority for himself. The image of a professor peering over his glasses dramatizes the process of education. The implication here is that men tend to sharpen and refine their skills and knowledge in those areas that promise the greatest rewards or that gain them the highest respect, esteem, and admiration of their fellows. The emphasis here is on the ability to stimulate learning and on the transfer of information and techniques to the next generation. At its highest, this symbol represents mastership in some unique field or a special gift for teaching. Negative would be intellectual intimidation or a simple delight in making others feel incompetent or inferior. Today, the accent is on skill and knowledge. Expert advice may be sought to answer some perplexing questions. Your greatest advantage lies in sticking with what you like and are good at. Let others handle the rest. So, I mean, when we're talking about a Libra eclipse, we're talking about pairing up, right? This is about partnerships and alliances and working together relationships. So, this is kind of saying, we don't know everything, like we don't all know everything that we need, but we can certainly, hang on, my computer's doing something weird. Okay. But we can learn from other people, right? So this to me is saying it's a time where what we know and what we have to give and how we can help in relationships, create more balance is to give what we know in service of possibly to the relationship, but to learn how to ask for help and work with other people. And that's what this is saying to me, that, it takes togetherness, right, to sometimes overcome things that we find imbalanced or unfair in a relationship or in a situation. Guard against the temptation to give advice on matters in which you have little experience or knowledge. Try not to be a know-it-all or give the impression that you have all the answers. Don't make others feel small by belittling their lack of knowledge or criticizing them in front of others. Keywords: knowledge, wisdom, specialization, skill, proficiency, know-how, expertise, self-refinement, mastery, instruction, and responsibility. This just basically says to me that we all need to play our part. Take responsibility for what our part of anything is that might not be working, and no more, right? And hopefully others are doing the same. That's a balanced relationship, working with others. To do what? To create change. Cardinal signs are change. Now this eclipse is ruled by Venus, and we have Venus over here in its fall in the sign of Scorpio. And, Venus doesn't like it in Scorpio, but, we talk about, planets and their dignity. It just means they don't operate the way that they prefer, but it doesn't mean they can't be significant. And with Venus in Scorpio, which can represent values and finances, Scorpio is very much a money sign. But it also, when it comes to relationships, represents getting down into the depths, right? Emotionally. Scorpio is a water sign. So this is no superficial Venus, right? It wants to get to the bottom of the situation, whatever that might be, and create change and transformation. And that can come with a crisis of sorts, because that's what Scorpio does, right? It pulls things out root and stem. And this is the ruler of this eclipse. So it's likely to be very emotionally charged, whether it has to do with relationships or with some type of financial situation, with money. It's either going to change. We're either going to work to create change and find out really what the root problem is, or some things are going to die off, right? It's at that critical point with an eclipse like this, the ruler being Venus in the sign of Scorpio. So it can be very intense when it comes to those things alongside this eclipse. And remember, eclipses can play out prior to, 30 days or so prior to, or after, but, there are longer cycles. So this eclipse could start with so much in Libra and all the planets that are going to come eventually and hit those degrees, sort of, reactivating and tripping off those degrees. This is an eclipse that really has legs into the future here. So look for these themes to continue, up 6 months, right? But, just like with any other eclipse cycle, we can look back at the 9-year, back 9 years when, although in the inverse, the nodes were in Aries and Libra, and then 9 years before that, if, to see for yourselves or even in the collective, what kinds of things were coming up that are thematic to the things that you might be dealing with now. And honestly, they can be related, right? With the South Node eclipse, it can be those things that are coming back that we thought were long gone, or we didn't, something coming up that we didn't see coming, or something that has to be resolved, transformed, or let go of, with the ruler being Venus and Scorpio. And a South Node eclipse means we're dealing with something from the past, whether that be an actual person in a relationship. Yes, people can show back up. Or if it's a behavior pattern, right? And then situations can present themselves as well as people can present themselves in our lives that sort of challenge us to deal with those past behaviors or those past situations in a different way, right? If Libra is very, very compromising, can be overgiving, right? A lot of times with a lot of Libra placements, they usually will be the initiator, right? In creating diplomacy or compromise, and sometimes they end up with the short end of the stick, right? So right now it's like, well, if that's the case, maybe it's time we learn that we don't have to take the back seat, that it's okay to put ourselves first, Aries, and to make sure that things are balanced. That can create conflict if people are used to us doing that. Now, the inverse of that can be where, Libra has a shadow side where, it can be a little manipulative. Maybe it can be a little superficial. And if fallen on that side, then the scales can be balanced. We may have somebody checking us like, yeah, it isn't all about you, right? Aries and Libra. This is about the team, the pair, the other. So look for past themes in your life or past people to come back. And when we've got an eclipse conjunct Mercury, right? Can be messages or news, right? From the past, or Mercury can represent people, siblings, right? Relatives, friends. It can represent with Lilith, and I'll go ahead and mention that now because it's Libra stellium with Lilith there, which is the shadow side, the shadow feminine, Lilith in Libra, where we might be feeling, if we're somebody that normally doesn't speak up, we might be feeling the urge to do that. And we might have the spunk to do that, Lilith and Libra. Or Lilith and Libra can represent the dark side, the dark and sexual taboo side of the female, ruled by Venus, Libra, or the judicial or justice system, what's there, can represent the under dark shadow side of that either we want to expose, and we have the voice to do that now, or we could be exposed, right? It just depends. But we're going to see that dark shadowy side come out during this eclipse. And then we have Lilith's opposite, which is Juno, here in the sign of Libra. And Juno is about commitment. Both of these are asteroids, right? Juno represents what are we committing ourselves to within relationships, right? Libra. And Juno represents the wife in the zodiac. So very different energies, but I think both are needed. And combined, we can feel the strength and the confidence to balance things out, but also reach a place where we're absolutely committed to a fair and balanced situation. Also, if we're talking about relationships, with Lilith, Mercury, and Juno traveling together, the ruler being Venus and Scorpio, if we're talking just about relationships, in the dark side of that, yeah, we could have triangulated relationship situations that or may come to the surface, and we might be confronted with dealing with those things. So definitely something like that could happen. But again, with Venus and Scorpio, this is the time. It could be a crisis, right? If something like that's good. This is the time that it has to be cut out or transformed. So it either dies or it's transformed and starts new in a different form. And that's what this is about. It doesn't always mean an ending, but an ending can be an ending to the way that something has operated, so that we can have a new beginning. And there could be some crisis where this is concerned. So you'll have to let me know how that's going. But, it does look like it can be pretty intense. And what makes it more intense, we have all of this Libra, we just talked about, right? Squaring Mars. Now, Mars rules the North Node. This is how, this is where we're feeling our fight, right? What we're moving towards, what we want for ourselves, for good or for bad, right? I mean, some people are going to fall on the Aries side of always being selfish. And, now they've got an opposition here saying, yeah, it isn't all about you, or vice versa. Like I said, the Libra person is standing up for themselves and saying, no, this has got to be balanced. This is what I want. Well, we've got a T-square here to Mars, the ruler of the North Node, in the sign of Cancer. Mars doesn't like it in Cancer. It's not in its dignity in the sign of Cancer. But what does Cancer represent? Well, it represents our emotions. It represents our past. It represents our family. It represents women in our lives. It represents our history. It represents our security and our home. Right? So Mars is there taking action and really being fueled by emotional situations or protective instincts or a fight or flight kind of response to something that we need to survive, possibly, or that our family needs. And so we very much might be in situations where we are waging, we're in the middle of, or we are championing some kind of war for the sake of something that's emotional, or to protect our families or our homes. And we see that with this hurricane, right? We see that, like, who's coming to the rescue? Where is, the peace and the help and the Red Cross, and who's going to help do the heavy lifting, and who's arguing about who's responsible for what, and where's the money coming from, or where's the money gone, because we're hearing that, right? And then we have the square here to Mars and Cancer, where it's like people can get angry because their families are in danger. That's just one example. But if we're fighting a war, either privately within ourselves, within a relationship, or within our lives, or we're seeing somebody in, that we're close to going through this, Mars can fight, and it's going to fight for its own security. And that's pretty strong, right? Strong because emotion and history is backing that up. And we've got that. So a T-square is providing tension on the axis of this eclipse, cardinal sign. Something has to change, and we might find ourselves in an emotional battle. And it could even be based on the things the emotions that we hold inside, what we experienced even as a child. Is what's going on in our lives, what we're seeing out there in the world, sort of eliciting some kind of emotional response that is making us want to pick up, our sword and fight or protect, or whatever that may be. And so I think that this, this Aries Libra axis, and now with the square to Mars and Cancer, which, like I said, Mars is going retrograde. and it'll be affecting us in the sign of Cancer for a while. What battle are you fighting? Is there a battle you're fighting, right? And it could be in a work situation. It could be with an association. It could be a legal battle. It could be something within the family. It could be just, and are you protecting family members? Are you just trying to make sure everybody has enough resources? I mean, there are battles, emotional battles, long-standing battles potentially, and could even be psychological, but some kind of battle that we could be fighting that has to do with relationships and the history of relationships over even lifetimes, right? Or just many, many years in our lives or in the lives of the people we love. This is a very, very emotionally charged time. And make no mistake that we're talking about water signs, right? And again, the ruler of this eclipse is Venus. And yes, it's trining Mars in Cancer, which is nice. It's sort of like Venus in Scorpio wants to get down and pull things out and transform it or kill it or whatever. And it's trining Mars in Cancer. So water, right? And we have Saturn in the sign of Pisces. So in this eclipse, we have a water trine. So very emotional, very sensitive, but supportive, right? If we are moving or trying to find justice or take up the good fight, right? Use that Mars in Cancer that way, to resolve or transform the Venus and Scorpio things that are affecting us from this eclipse in a positive way, in a permanent way. That would be the way to direct that. Now, in a trine, it's like the energy's there, it's opening up. Things might just show up that can help you do that. Well, who? I don't know. Somebody that helps stand alongside you, maybe from your family or who has had the same experience, that's going to help guide you through it or not make you feel like you're fighting this fight alone. Right? Maybe a woman shows up that's there to help you uncover what's going on psychologically or to provide assistance financially, right? Maybe. And the trines to Saturn in Pisces, like I talked about last time, is Saturn in Pisces recognizes that the work, right, that needs to be done is work that that is related to Pisces, right? So the healthcare system, the mental health, mental health care system, our own personal mental health, or, pharmaceutical drugs, so many Pisces things, water events, but that we are all connected, right? That what is going on, we have a responsibility, Saturn and Pisces, to include in our solutions or our feelings what is the right thing to do for everybody. And this grand trine, we can be fighting our own personal battle, but we can be even opening ourselves up even wider to the realization that it isn't just about us, that a fight that we might be taking on that we feel passionate about could help other people. We're all connected. Saturn and Pisces wants us to realize that we can build something and we can change something by taking responsibility for all of us, right? For that, and considering that we're all in this together. And that maybe the shadow side of Saturn and Pisces is we every single person doesn't know, who's running the show behind the scenes. Pisces, you don't see things clearly, but those people that have been there behind the scene, depending on what your lot in life is, what your job is, what your experiences are, may know, and maybe they come out and they work on helping manage those things from their experience. And we see this happening all over. I talked about this the last time, where there were so many people that left their positions in healthcare jobs, or it's insurance, all these different things that we all need, right? Even social services, or, we can talk about so many things in Pisces, that things are coming back now, because maybe there is knowledge. Maybe our life's work hasn't completely passed away, but it's changed into a different form, Saturn, right? That some of the confusion, we're starting to come out of that. And I talked last time about how, I'm trying to revive my consulting business. And then I reached out and I've connected with the network of people I used to work with. And what am I finding? I'm finding that this feeling, just in my industry, is not, I'm not the only one feeling it. That there are groups of people that are wanting to change the form of certain systems and use their expertise to do that. But it's starting to come together. And I kind of always felt like that's what was going to happen, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I'd like to know if you're experiencing something like that. But now that is the positive way that we can start to come out and start working on, creating the necessary boundaries and the necessary structures that we need to support all of us. And it's going to be something, there can be compassion projects. They can be, there can be sacrifices that we have to make in the name of doing the right thing, or bringing that knowledge, or helping one another. And sometimes that sacrifice is, being willing to be the person that speaks up and is okay being not popular or the bad guy, right? Could be. There's so many ways that this can come about, but I see it very significantly with this eclipse that's happening. And because, Saturn in Pisces is mutable. Yes, Saturn is retrograde. Definitely, again, indicates, working on things from the past, or drawing from our past experience, or work, or difficulties even, right? Because, we go through difficult times, and the hope is that we're learning something from it that we can take into the future that will help us if we stumble across those things again. We learn something new, but that we can use to help other people. And that's very much Saturn in Pisces too. But Saturn has been in a square to Jupiter in Gemini. And I talked about that in the beginning of this video, where it's trining the axis of Libra, where the eclipses are happening. We've got a square there. Saturn squaring Jupiter. So it's bringing up more than one thing, but we're wanting to be vocal. We're wanting to know the truth about things. And people may be coming back in that can help us do that, or open our minds, or that we need to talk to or network with, right? Network. Jupiter is very much about networks. I'm seeing that happen. As I'm reaching back out, I'm also seeing, in my astrology business, that is the consultations I've had lately, and then some of them have been with friends, have been so significant, right? And they include long-standing themes and significant behavior changes that benefit their relationships, their jobs, themselves. It's been very interesting and super profound during this cycle. But the last week or two, it's even more so. And people are seeing things actually start to change. Now, Jupiter's going to go retrograde here. So things are coming up, and maybe this is going to be like, and then Saturn will go direct, right? So what's on the table now, we might need to be working on to grow slowly, or we might see that there's more to do there before things continue to open up. But boy, I think after the first of the year into the spring, things are just going to start to really blossom, And again, we're talking cardinal signs. So if you are at Aries, or have Aries placements, or Libra placements, Cancer placements or Capricorn in the later degrees, obviously, you'll be feeling that. Now keep in mind, Mars is going to move. Before it goes retrograde, it's going to retrograde in early Leo, and it's going to make an opposition and to Pluto. And then the planets in Libra are going to be a little further along, and we've got Chiron in the mix, and we're going to have cardinal grand cross there at the end. And this 29 degrees of Capricorn is going back and saying, we've got, since 2008, okay, so that's 10, 16 years of things that could be coming up to be uncovered, to be handled and changed, but connected to much longer cycles because they're in the square to the nodal axis. So this is significant. And this is a lot of what we might see, old structures, Capricorn things, corporations, government, systems in our personal lives. Just where have we experienced abuse of power? This Pluto is uncovering that and moving to expose it. We see that with the Sean Diddy Combs case, right? And I talked about that in my last video, how that's hitting. That's just an example. It can be corrupt, issues that we're fighting against, right? To change to more fair, more balanced in a situation that's affecting our lives or somebody in our family, right? And old, archaic systems and that we need to we might be being called to step in and participate in the change that needs to happen as we go forward into a time when Pluto in Aquarius is going to say to us, we need to work together. We either come together and create change as a diverse community, or we're controlled by things outside of our communities, right? And so this is a really important time that hands us potentially some power, but we may have to participate in leveling the playing field and helping to bring down some of these old structures so that we can move into newer, better structures. And we could be feeling pretty emotional about it. It's kind of like, well, do we walk away from our jobs? I was talking to an old friend / client that I'm going to start working with again. And it's like, well, a lot of us were ready to step out or did step out of our positions. And again, this is healthcare, but what is the legacy that we're leaving? Do we care about our kids and our grandkids? Yeah, we've had enough, so we want to step back and say, okay, I'm out. And I did that. But it's like, if you're called to come back or you have something to contribute, that experience and that legacy can help those that are coming up behind us, so that all of these old structures where we feel tied and bound can be changed and freed up for the generations that are coming after us. And I know that sounds really dramatic, but honestly, when I read the astrology, it's like, that's what this is for. And it could be happening again, like I said, within your own personal structures, family structures, the history there, or within your job, or within your communities, or within a system or a situation, or we're watching these things play out in the public systems and the corporate systems. And this is a very intense time of change. I suspect we're just going to see some very, very dramatic things happen between now and the end of the year. And if you're a cardinal sign, you'll feel it, but you may be called to participate in it. So again, we're talking Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, Libra. These are big times of change. And, the air signs are very much involved. Gemini and the Jupiter in Gemini. I think some of the relief comes from the Gemini area of your chart. If you can just have the patience to sort through it, and I think wait for things to come to you. I've had so many people come back into my life and contact me, things that I hadn't thought about in so long, but it's like, oh my gosh, it's like in my mind, it's like, oh, now's the time, because those relationships were cultivated, but maybe they weren't time for them to grow to the ultimate functionality that they were meant to be, right? Pause, start, pause, something grows. Jupiter and Gemini is going to help some of those things grow. And they may be things that we hadn't thought were going anywhere for a million years, right? But in a different form. And it's going to require compromise and working with one another and realizing that I can give something to you, you can give something to me, and we can all win, right? We can all win, feeling each other's, difficulties here, and being willing to help everybody work towards relieving whatever is going on in their life or rebuilding something. So this really got me. I want to mention to you before I end this video that we have Chiron in the mix that's going to be involved in these squares. And Chiron is our wounding, obviously, our personal wounding in the sign of Aries. It can be how we react, or it can be about our physical body, right? Aries rules the head, it rules blood. But it rules action and aggression too. And in the collective, it can rule our military and our police, and just overall physical. So we're healing a wound here along with this North Node. I mean, Chiron's been in Aries for a really long time, but we've had the North Node go through there, and right now Chiron's at 21 degrees of Aries, which is really close to where the eclipse on April 8th occurred. So if some kind of wounding or situation is coming back up from that time period, it's on purpose, right? No accident. This is still a theme. Something needs to be healed, or we may have an opportunity to heal something that has been long-standing, obviously prior to that, but based on something that came up during the eclipse in the spring. And that can be painful, right? And when we're talking about Chiron squaring Mars, which will happen here before Mars goes retrograde, so it'll happen more than once. This is like, this could be physical. Mars rules Chiron. Cancer rules the moon. So when we have the full moon in Aries that's coming up, that's the next lunar event. It's a full moon in Aries, which I'll talk about. And then when we have the last Aries eclipse, this is going to be significant, right? These are things that, depending on where it sits in your chart, can really involve our families, our homes, again, the protective instincts, but also our physical bodies, and where we might need to really fight for certain things, or fight to heal certain things, Chiron and Aries. I suspect that's going to be pretty intense. But again, even though Chiron is retrograde, right, Mars is still moving, it's applying. So they're in a square. And that will come back when Mars retrogrades in Leo and hit again and square Chiron and Aries. So this is something to watch. Be careful. I mean, 21 degrees, it's going to be squaring Pluto for the most part. That's a square. And so what will we have? A T-square that the apex is Aries. So that's going to be a critical time, and that you'll see that occurring here in the next couple of weeks, but it'll be very active during the next lunar event, which we'll talk about, and that'll be a full moon in Aries. And again, by then we'll have the sun that has moved, Mercury that has moved, so a little further. So again, looks like, and I'm not moving the chart, but looks like we're going to be setting up for another cardinal grand cross during the next lunar event, which will be a full moon in Aries in the later degrees of Aries, close to Chiron. So those of you that have later degree cardinal placements, that's coming up. So, obviously I'm available for readings. If you have those placements and you want to talk about this time period, whether it's something going on in a relationship, with your family, with your health, with your job, any kind of fight you're taking on or you're seeing play out, or you want to know what's coming, get a hold of me. My information is down below in the description box, and I would love to meet you and help you break down your chart. This is a very dynamic time, and I'm feeling it. I know a lot of people are feeling it. There are huge shifts that are coming, and we are seeing it in the collective. So I think now it's time we come together. We figure out how to balance things out. Remember that Libra is ruled by Venus, and it is the sign of love and harmony. So ultimately, I think that's where we want to land. But again, we have shadow sides of everything, but we can come together as a collective and do our best to avoid the shadow side of anything playing out. But where we see that, where we don't have control of those things, like the weather events, are places where we can offer some assistance, possibly even if it's just, a kind word, or anything Piscean, right? A poem, a song, a kind word, something that just lets people that are struggling know that other people see them and feel them and realize that we're all connected in some way. So that's what's going on. That's the eclipse. Pretty crazy stuff. I have a lot going on. Like all of those things are applying in my life right now, and some things I don't want to get into in detail. At some point I will, but boy, have I been feeling, really, really spicy and wanting to speak out and actually take action to do things on behalf mostly of other people. And just what I see playing out in the world that I really feel strongly is about that it is not justified. They're injustices that I'm seeing play out. And yes, some of them are affecting my family, but boy, have I been, I'm a fighter anyway. I'm a really edgy kind of fighter type of person by nature. And I've really felt that urge and that push with that Mars and Cancer and with this axis. And of course I have Saturn and Pisces. So it's like, yeah. So at some point I'll be able to tell the whole story, but I'd love to hear yours. Again, if you want to talk about it personally, get a hold of me. My email address and my website is down in the description box. Everybody stay safe. Everybody do the right thing. Mars and Cancer can be kind of crazy, right? We're talking about protecting our family and our homes, and we've got a square to the nodes, and Pluto eventually is going to be involved. The opposition, Pluto and Mars, like this is a standoff, right, between two really powerful planets. They can be dangerous. So you also want to be careful, to protect yourself within conflicts or situations. Watch your health. A lot of it depends on where it's hitting in your chart, right? But nonetheless, very, very intense times coming up, and definitely with this next full moon in Aries, which I'll go over soon. So thanks so much. Take good care. May the stars forever be in your favor. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.